My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era. Today, I have Abirami Shanmugaratnam, and she is an elite athlete, recent chiropractic grad. So I should have called her doctor, actually. And she plays sports like badminton, rugby, ice hockey, cross country, soccer. I actually met her through ultimate frisbee, which she also played as well. And she's also a personal trainer and coach. So she has a business called SKYHIGH Performance, and that resulted from turning opportunities where she was too, or I guess overqualified or not having enough experience, into kind of just creating her own opportunities. And she is looking to expand her influence through her role as an educator and mentor to Tamil youth in athletics, so they won't face the same barriers to performance that she did. So Abby, I guess, welcome to the show. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I like to start at the beginning. As a relatively new father, I love hearing about people's early stories of kind of, when their childhood or like early formative teenage years and kind of how that impacted who they are today. So for you, like, can you tell us about, I guess, your childhood or your formative teenage years and how that sparked your interest around health and fitness?
Right. So yeah, I feel like a lot of who I am today, my identity has to do with like my formative years that shaped me, especially as a kid. So my mom was a teacher growing up, and my grandmother was a teacher. And so naturally, like I feel like I fell down the footstep of kind of getting into that teaching role, because what I do as a coach and trainer is teach people, right? And so being around that really influenced and shaped who I am. More than that, I feel like it was curiosity. So I think at a young age, my parents would put me in a lot of extracurricular activities. And I know, coming from a lot of different households, I know a lot of families have a tendency to put their kids in so many different classes like dance, music, violin, Tamil class. So I was that kid who was, finished school, but not finished school. I was running around from one class to another. So I was always occupied, engaged. And like through all these different classes and extracurriculars, I met so many different people, different communities. I think that really opened my communication skills, helped me to network from a young age as well. And a lot of these people that I've met from my formative years, I still keep in contact with. And it really kind of introduced me to that Tamil community, helped me like really shape who I am, and especially that Tamil side. But more than that, like going to these extracurricular activities, I feel like not all of them I was particularly drawn to. For example, I did not like Bharatanatyam. I did not like music. Usually I was a class clown in the class, but naturally I wanted to explore running and sports. And so I took it upon myself to join a lot of sports growing up in school, kind of as an outlet for what I felt like I was missing, because those are the things that my parents didn't particularly put me into. And to be honest, growing up, we didn't have space for that in our community, at least. There were not many leagues or organizations, for whether that was youth or even at an older age, I felt like, right, back then. So I think through curiosity and play, it really shaped my passion and kind of helped me understand what I really enjoyed or what I wanted to do with my life. So I think as early as grade 3, I knew this is really what I wanted. I was a scientist. I really liked asking questions. I was always curious. And I think a lot of teachers caught onto that as well. And that helped shape me into not only a scholar, but also someone who juggled sports and really excelled at that too. One particular mention I have to say was my grade 3 gym teacher, Miss Perry. She was definitely not your typical gym teacher. She would like really make you fall in love with gym or hate it. So for me, I had like a love-hate relationship. Like if you came late to class, she would make you sit in a wall sit the entire class. And so like that kind of discipline, or if you forgot your gym shoes, you'd be doing push-ups at the end of the class. And like I think that really formed a lot of my formative fitness as young as grade 3, where I learned how to do a push-up really well. I learned how to like beat boys and running suicides. So that really formed like how I became an athlete early on and kind of took me down that route. In terms of health, I would say I grew up in a household where both my parents were diabetic. And like, I think that was really the norm growing up in South Asian households at the time. And I felt like I really needed to tackle this. I didn't want to fall down that road as well as I started to become more informed on, the environmental factors that affected this kind of disease or diabetes, for example, right? So that really stemmed my interest in like more of from a science medicine perspective. And whereas my fitness came from really being preoccupied and very busy and attending all these classes, and somewhere down the line, I gravitated towards what I wanted to do. So yeah, being from childhood, it really formed who I am today.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have two younger brothers. We're 3 years, each of them are 3 years apart. Yeah, for me.
And also, do they share kind of that same love of like health and fitness as you do, or?
Yeah, actually, they all are involved in the same fields. We all had a common passion of soccer growing up. We all played soccer, and that was like our connecting factor. One of my brothers is in Nipissing University. He's also a coach, assistant coach with Nipissing University, and he's pursuing research. The other one he's probably the best soccer player out of us, but he stopped very young, but he just enrolled in the military. So we're all involved in some sort of physically related field for sure.
And you talked about your childhood where like the fitness side was because your schedule is kind of jam-packed with those activities. And it sounds like you're juggling a lot. Obviously, that makes you really good at balancing like managing your time and priorities and all of that. Did you ever wish that you had less on your plate, or like is that kind of, I guess, habit of like having a busy schedule something you kind of carried on as you become like older?
Yeah, I think it definitely became a habit. It's almost like if I wasn't doing something, it's almost like, what do I do to fill in my schedule? Because you're so used to having like finishing school, there's something next, and then by the end of the day, you come home, you're tired, you fall asleep, and then there's next activity waiting for you. And I enjoyed some of these activities just because I look forward to meeting friends. Some of my friends I would see in classes, and it was just kind of a community I built in different areas in the GTA, and some good like lifelong friends I've also connected with over the years.
I think you named your business Sky High Performance, and that's from like I guess your nickname Sky High, or I guess your superhero name. So could you tell people, I guess, in terms of where that I guess name came from? This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
Yeah, so Sky High was again, it goes back to grade 3. Sky High was a name I wanted to name after my shoe brand. So I was really into shoes, designing shoes, and I wanted to do my own shoe line very young. We used to do show and tell, so I'd have a sketchbook with all my new these crazy shoe ideas I had, with like wings and flying and these futuristic ideas. Eventually people found out I was really fast, and so I naturally just was nicknamed Sky High. And like this happened like during recesses where boys would come up to me and they'd be like, hey, you want to race? I was like, and then we would like bet on Pokemon cards or Dunkaroos, or it just started as fun and it kind of just stuck. And so naturally, like as I grew older and I started thinking of a business name, it just came naturally that Sky High Performance. The funny story is actually I'm scared of heights. So and ironically, I also wanted to be a pilot as well. So interesting how that name all came about, but it's almost like your brand story, but it's technically my life story that started a long time ago and it just naturally developed.
Interesting. I had another question that kind of, I guess, relating to the jam-packed nature of your schedule. As I guess, I mean, I don't know if I'm a fellow like high achiever, but like just managing a lot of things. With that comes usually some kind of ambition, like in terms of you want to do certain things and maybe in different areas of your life. Do you ever find it challenging to relate to people or even friends who aren't as ambitious as you? Because you seem to have that drive or passion, and not everyone necessarily has that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like the fact that I guess the high achiever, I don't even think I consider myself a high achiever. I think it like, for example, when you think it's all relative, right? To respective to each person's life, and like having trained over 300 people over the past 12 years and like having a look into each person's life. Like I work with people who are like, type B personality, corporate clients, to like, mothers, to like performance athletes, and the whole label of high achiever. I feel like everyone is in their own lane, and it's really like achieving the best that you can be, and everyone's in a different stage in their life, right? I think the idea of me being a high achiever or maybe overachiever comes from like maybe the habit of, always being busy. So instead of a high achiever, I think of it as like busy, busier, and then there's burnout. So that's how I've looked at it over the years. I think the idea of that as well relates back to like balance. From experience, I don't think their balance really exists. I think it's more so of what you can sacrifice and what you can prioritize at different points in your life, right? And so that's what I'm doing on a constant like continuum of like, I'm at this point in my life, what can I prioritize? What can I balance? And so in that moment, I can achieve things in certain areas, whereas in other areas, I'm probably performing at a lower capacity than I should be. So yeah, I don't, and I have these conversations with a lot of clients as well. And just through training, I impact a lot of lives, just having these conversations. I often say some of them is not just physical, but is mental training, and just having those conversations, after a tough day of looking into a window of someone's life, you understand like it comes with sacrifice. And yeah, I used to think you can balance everything, and it's really not true, as from experience as well. So it's not that I can't relate, but it's more so like it's something that I have conversations with people on an everyday basis. And like I think lately I've been looking into like clients who are mothers and motherhood and having that conversation. And like I think even look at them, they can be high achievers in life. It's all with respect to like what their life and where they are in time and space right now. So yeah.
I guess you kind of highlighted one aspect of coaching or training that is not underrated but under talked about. But I think of it like similar to like certain professions where like people open up to you. I feel like a barber, at least for guys, it's like a barber is one of them. So I also feel like if you have a personal trainer or like a coach, it's also like somebody that you share a lot with, maybe more than other folks, especially if you're like an athlete who spends a lot of time training, you tend to kind of share with people that you spend a lot of time with. So that's kind of an interesting insight. You currently, do some work with MLSE. So you're TFC community soccer coach as well as Raptors basketball academy operations. Tell us maybe more about what those roles are and like how did you get into those opportunities?
Right. So they're really cool roles that I really like, always dreamed about working with an organization like this. And I want to tell you that, Van Vliet called me and he was like, hey, you got to work with us, but that's not how it happened. It was actually really boring. 7 years ago, I applied on Indeed. It was just a posting that came up through MLSE as a soccer coach, a soccer developmental instructor. So this is working at the grassroots level, implementing programming in various cities and alongside pro player clinics where some of the first team players would come on, and then we as coaches would like help out with some of the programming, and we would often pick up top talents from different areas. And even there's one time where we helped in the recruiting process for the TFCV Academy, where and I feel like grassroots is where a lot of sport programming is very underrated. It's like the level before you go pro or semi-pro, and which is often that's where you'll find a lot of the best coaches at that level, because that's where you actually have to develop athletes, right? So I was fortunate to land that role. Was there for 7 years, and it was only this past year where I was given the opportunities to work on the Raptors side of things, which was I've always dreamed about working with Raptors in any capacity, and I was fortunate to work in the role of operations in these camps, and hopefully continue to keep working in that role as well. And that itself has brought other opportunities, just networking with other like really great coaches, right? And meeting and the organizations that they are a part of as well, especially in the sporting industry and world.
Through these opportunities, have you had a chance to meet any celebrity players on either the TFC or Raptor side?
Oh yeah, I met a bunch of TFC players. Recently I met Muggsy Bogues, which was awesome. It was just like sometimes you feel like you're a fan as well when you're there. Like even though you're representing the organization, it's like unreal. Like I'm a huge fan of the game. So Muggsy Bogues, Jeff Downen Jr., Grady Dick was also there at the last camp. So that's pretty cool to see how they interact in person. I know sometimes we see them in media and we get this impression, but in person, you just get to see how down to earth some of them are. It was just a really cool experience this past week, getting to meet all those players as well.
I know you talked about kind of balance not really being a thing, but what's your strategy for kind of managing your time between all these roles that you kind of have, like with MLSE, you're also a personal trainer with UFT. and you also have your own business as well. So how do you kind of decide how much time to allocate between all those different things? And how do you balance, or like how do you create your schedule on a week by week or month by month basis to kind of make sure you kind of have enough time for all of it?
Yeah, so you have to really be like owning a business, like you have to be your own admin person, you have to like juggle multiple roles. So um I stick by my calendar. I'm really on top of scheduling clients in if there's any conflicts. Communication is huge, especially when you're doing client work, because you have a responsibility to show up to client sessions on time, and especially I manage over like 30 to 40 clients a week. So it's a huge load, but sometimes, like I said, there's priority and there's times where shifts happen, people graduate on, and I'm able to manage different part-time jobs and contract positions just by kind of the flexible nature of the work that I do as well, which is really nice. And yeah, not overcommitting or undercommitting to anything. That's also been another huge aspect to me, like juggling everything and being able to kind of put my foot in different doors as well.
Since you're so involved, like you said, you're quite busy with kind of roster of clients among your different and like these different other roles that you're doing. Do you still have time, or like do you still play any of the sports that you kind of grew up playing? Or are you able to make time for that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like that's one of my biggest policies. Like that's something I grew up and it's become a habit where wherever I'm in life, I'm always dedicated to some kind of sport. This season, I've still continued to play touch football, like at a provincial and more of a national level, just from different in different organizations, but I particularly found one that I really like enjoy playing in. So I play that on Sundays, and then on Mondays I joined a recent intramural soccer team. So that's nice to kind of reconnect back to soccer where it all started. That was like the very first sport I picked up, and so it's been years since I played. I coach a lot, but to actually play, on a team, it's kind of life coming back full circle in a way. So I don't overcommit to sports too, but I can get carried away with that at times. So I really try to limit, days where I take time to do that. Yeah.
And like if you had to choose a sport, a favorite one to play, like what would that be for you?
Right now it had to be football. I think I've gotten involved in football over the last 7 years, and like it's just that sport that connects all the different athletic skills that I've played in various different sports together, like hand-eye coordination, foot speed, agility, plyo jumping capacity. So everything in one. Obviously, ultimate frisbee did that for me right out of university when I first met you. That was, I think, ultimate frisbee is a great way to just open up and learn the game of, opening up lanes, seeing players, and like I think that has a lot to do with like, football and any sport in general. So but right now would be football, like flag or touch football. Yeah.
Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you. And on the training side, specifically around kind of, I think we talked about this before as well, but there's a lot of misconceptions. Like even I heard it from my wife when she was first kind of training. There's all these things that women hear around strength training and like, oh, you're gonna like just misconceptions around like bulking up and like all this stuff. So how do you address these misconceptions, and like you kind of see this firsthand with like women that you train, and like how and are things changing in terms of education around strength training? Because I think my understanding of strength training is like way different like when I first started to what it is now. So I'm just curious about your thoughts there.
Yeah, from the time I first started consultations, 12 years ago to now, to be honest, I'm not seeing a huge change. There's always the similar questions that come up like, oh, can I change my fat to muscle? Or am I going to get too bulky from lifting too much? Or people come in with the notion of, oh, can you only do cardio only and not strength? So often that requires a huge education piece. And with the background in science, I'm able to break it down and understand and teach people like, hey, you can't convert fat to muscle. They're two different cells, for example. Or people often, I use my life as an experience, or women my size, my age will come to me and be fearful of getting so big, like upper body wise, just by picking up a weight. And then I put things into perspective, and I'll be like, hey, you carry like groceries every day from school, don't you? I'm like, hey, how much do you think that weighs? 15 pounds, look, this is a 15-pound dumbbell. And then I also explain, like, look at me, like, I can lift 3 times my body weight. And sometimes being more personable, and that can help, that strategy can help if the science aspect doesn't really hit home, that message. And sometimes I've also seen people like just not get it and understand. And I think that's so important, that when you first take on a client in that consultation phase, you set the standards, you set the expectations, so that nobody's disappointed at the end, And I think that doing so many consults over there, these are the same questions I get. And a lot of these just, I feel, come from either societal or like cultural norms and restrictions that are often put on women that are hard to break at times. I think with the world of social media and like now with, you have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, there's so much information being shared, good and bad, but it's also important to also navigate those worlds with caution and those platforms with caution as well. There's also, as much as there's good information, there's also still misinformation that is also being shared as well, right?
Have you ever felt that you got treated differently as a trainer or coach because you're a female, especially since you work with like high performance athletes?
Early on, so my background is I came from university strength and conditioning. So I work with football players, soccer players, and these were people often bigger than me, faster than me. But I think I gained my respect not because because I was fast or had a background in running or sprinting, or because I could prove myself that way, but because I actually listened to the athletes, listened and genuinely cared, and like spend time with them after sessions, trying to be, and like I come from a very technical background, so I often think that like athletes will pick up on coaches who don't know their stuff as well, and that first impressions are often a lasting impression too. So I think having a background in kinesiology and like knowing my science, and then jumping into the field and having a background in the technical aspect of sprinting and running, and then working with these high performance athletes, like I've gained their trust and respect. So that kind of really boosted my confidence early on. And I think the experience, like I started coaching as early as 13 years old on a boys soccer team because it was kicked off. And then that's where my coaching journey started. So I really built that coaching eye. And I'm still growing every day. But yeah, I can see how people can see women in that field as like different. It's like, do you have the same qualifications, or what do you have that you can teach me? Like I've come across that when I've applied for jobs and such in the industry. But from my athletes themselves, or the people that have come out to me or reached out to me, or the people that I have worked with, I haven't seen that. If anything, like I've had a lot of referrals because of the great work that I did with them, and because of the results that they did see in their sport, or in whatever the goals they came to me with. So I've been fortunate to not be faced with a great deal of like disrespect, or like don't look at me like I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah.
You talked about social media. So I guess with your own business especially, like how are you using social media to help promote yourself and create opportunities? And yeah, like how do you generally go about getting clients and working with them? Is it like you find that most people work with you like on a, hey, let's work together for a couple of months, or is it like are you having like these like year-long or years-long relationships with some of your clients as well?
Mix of both actually. Now it's gearing more towards year-long, really building that relationship with clients. Like the longest standing client I have is out of 12 years of being a personal trainer, like this was my client from day one, 12 years. And so they build that relationship, they keep coming back because there's value to offer. Some people say, oh, if you're stuck with a trainer for too long, like you're not really growing. But I think that's really wrong, because things are forever changing. There's different aspects. Someone might come to you because, it's like a mandatory session in their day, and it's like I'm holding them accountable to it. There's changes in programming. And over those 12 years, I've like, this person's grown a lot, and they see it. They see results. So they do keep coming back. Other things that I do is I do workshops, seminars, so more like short term. I do people who graduate on. I highly encourage that too. I have several clients who have graduated on and then refer. Word of mouth and referrals are a huge thing in business. And that's where I've gained most of my clients from over the years, and even working with several organizations. So you start to get to know different members of the community and different organizations. And I really like that kind of work where I do freelance and contract with several places. And like it's social media that had the power of actually connecting me like internationally. Not only did I had the opportunity to go to like Olympic training camps in the States and then, network with world-renowned coaches, but those coaches have referred their athletes to me, when maybe they ended their careers and then they want to refer clients to me. So now I have the capacity to work with them overseas, whether that's in a consultation perspective or like programming or even like online virtual training. So it's interesting because virtual training has gained a trend since the pandemic. A lot more people are more open to the idea of it, but I've actually done that like way before the pandemic. So times of Skype, WhatsApp, like I've worked through various media outlets, and it just speaks to the versatility and the ability for you to, if you keep open and you keep your mind open, there you can really like find business in different avenues in life. So
you talked about the virtual part of it. I feel like the pandemic's been over for a little while, but you obviously just recently graduated and you're kind of in the middle of school for being a chiropractor. How did you find it being on the other side on the learning process while being in school during the pandemic and the virtual side of learning? Like, is that something you felt was like okay, or were you missing kind of that in-person element of like teaching, learning?
when it comes to school, I definitely miss in person. I'm more of like a person who sits right at the front of the class, as I learned over the years, because sitting at the back of the class, you can't really see much, or sometimes you lose focus. So I learned to like be in class through every lecture I'd attend in my first year until the pandemic hit. And I really retained a lot more, like just being there, right? Being present. Sometimes through a screen, it's hard to just be present all the time. And it's draining, right? Looking at a screen for that many hours. Like I took 14 courses at once, and it's to be there. I mean, you might have watched lectures at 2 times speed, but sometimes it can be distracting, right? Especially when you're in front of the screen. So I did miss that in learning aspects, especially when it comes to school. But the bright side of that is it allowed me to actually return back to business and take on clients, and then be able to juggle work as well on the side. Whereas when I first started school, I just shifted all of my focus to school. And so again, that shifting priority, sacrificing some things to fulfill other needs. So yeah, there's pros and cons to both.
Got it. And what's let's just say in the last couple of years, what's been like a learning lesson you've experienced, and like what did you learn from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, failure has taught me a lot of lessons. I think one of the biggest things I've learned from is just being mindful of the spaces you put yourself in, and not every environment is going to be the right environment for you, whether that's like, school and socially or in life or sports, right? So for me, coming out as a varsity athlete from university and competing at the high level, I was just looking forward to coming back and connecting with community. So finding like a appropriate or a league or a sports league that really challenged me, and surrounding me around like-minded individuals, or help me like form community and for me itself. That was a challenge for sure. I eventually figured it out 7 years later, but yeah, it was just the idea of like making sure and prioritizing your energies and finding the right places for you. I think that's the biggest like failure. I wouldn't call it a failure, more like a life lesson that I learned from.
How connected do you feel to like the Tamil community, let's say in Toronto, or just generally, like how do you, and I guess your Tamil identity?
I feel very connected just because, as I first described, like
Money can be hard to come by, but here's a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
Like attending all these Tamil classes, music, violin, Bharatanatyam, I still stay connected to people I've met through there. I still continue to like stay engaged with the Tamil community, like whether that's peeping into like your Tamil culture or like the Tamil Creator podcast I'm always listening to, just to see like how Tamils are like excelling in life, and like there's so much different avenues. And I think Tamil itself is like it is my identity. It's so diverse. I consistently continue to work with Tamil people, and like I have a look into their lives, and we often talk about Tamil movies or food, and I'm from Scarborough, so there's a huge diaspora of Tamil people that are living in Scarborough itself, and a huge aspect part of me and my vision is to give back to my community itself, right? I like to say, like, oftentimes I think we are often a marginalized community too. And so just having the capacity to give back and remembering that, being Tamil and my roots is what like started it all for me, especially where I am today. So that's kind of a future vision and project I still continue to strive for.
And if you had a chance to go back in a time machine and talk to 16-year-old Abby, what would you tell her?
Probably to relax a little. Don't be so busy in life. I mean, I enjoyed it at the time, but I mean, one thing I wish I did more of, I did a lot of reading books when I was younger, and I slowly along life with school and everything, I lost it along the road. So I would go back and say, continue to keep reading more because I feel like that also helped me expand my mind as well. So yeah.
And looking forward into like your personal legacy, how would you want to be described in a few sentences by your friends and family?
Well, as much as people know me for my athleticism, being fast, having capacity to run a business, one quote that I really reflected upon is like, people don't remember you for what you say, but for how you make them feel. And so I feel like that's what I want to be remembered for, not particularly like what kind of legacy I left behind. Obviously, I do want to inspire future generations to take the not so usual path and explore the many passions and discover their passion for life. But yeah, I just want to, I hope people remember me for, how I made them feel. That's really at the end of the day what I hope for.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to be known for being athletic and fast. And that's kind of a good segue into, the last part of the podcast. It's a fun speed run I like to call Creator Confessions. I'm going to say a bunch of statements, and you're going to tell me the first thing that pops in mind. Ready? Awesome. Favorite Tamil food?
Italy and sambar.
Something that scares you?
Heights, fear of heights.
Insecurity you have?
Insecurity not having a busy schedule, I guess. Is that insecurity? Like not filling up my plate with everything, being too free.
Favorite show you're watching?
Favorite show I'm watching. I haven't watched a show in a long time.
I figured you're going to say that.
Yeah, I don't have time, Mara.
A place you're itching to travel to?
Japan. Yeah.
Love that place. It's my favorite place to go travel to. Fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to?
Tamil creator. I want to give a shout out to Dharanya, who's also a fellow fitness trainer and coach as well. So supporting my fellow Tamil trainers out there as well.
Favorite childhood memory?
Favorite childhood memory is definitely running track and field. And yeah, finishing first in a lot of the races I remember.
Favorite movie of all time?
Padiyappa.
Tamil or English?
Yeah, it's definitely Padiyappa.
Why do you like Padiyappa?
Oh, Rajinikanth, of course. I grew up in a Rajinikanth household. Yeah.
Why that particular movie? I love Rajinikanth movie growing up too, but why that particular movie?
It's just there's if you just break down that movie, there's just so much different like stereotypical things like that have like I've learned growing up, like just the Neelambari's role versus Soundarya, and then Rajinikanth, and then there's that emotional role where like the dad gets kicked out and he's on the floor of his house, and like that's like probably one of the first movies I ever cried to. It just touched home, so I will always remember my first tear.
What's something that you could benefit from caring less about?
Caring less about probably what other people think of me.
What's a decision you've been putting off for a while?
Decision I've been putting off for a while. Possibly opening my own clinic.
Who would you want to have on your personal invisible counsel?
Oh,
sorry. I would say personal counsel. Like if you had a chance to kind of, be in your own space like you are right now and be able to like summon anybody to kind of, ask a question or just consult for advice, who would you want in your corner?
Michael Jordan. Yeah.
What's a purchase you've made that you've splurged on recently in the last few years that you have no regret about?
Probably fitness products like laser timing system. Yeah.
What's a pet peeve of yours?
Pet peeve of mine is when people don't show up on time.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have?
Not having the final chance to say goodbye to the loved ones.
A person, or I guess celebrity or person, whoever it is, whose life you'd want to experience for one day.
Celebrity's life. Huh.
Could be celebrity or even just anybody. I said celebrity, but it can be anybody.
It's a good question. Honestly, like sometimes I wish like, what is life like as an animal? Like from their perspective, my dog, for example, like how does he see life through his eyes? So yeah, it's weird, but
what's
yeah.
that movie? Pets, I think, is kind of like that, where that movie Pets talks about what is a dog or cat feel like when you leave. What's a book you've read or a podcast you've listened to recently that's had an impact on you?
Definitely The Alchemist. That's a book I read early on in life, in my journey, graduating school and figuring out where I wanted to be in life. So showed a lot of wisdom at the time.
What's a belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life?
Putting a pen to paper, to be honest, like very old school, like carrying a notebook around and just jotting down ideas and reflecting, journaling, brainstorming, and putting it all down on paper.
I love that. It also goes back to your comment you made at the early part of the podcast about calendaring. I forgot to kind of comment on that, but I live by the calendar. I feel like if you don't schedule it in, regardless of what it is, it doesn't happen or generally doesn't happen. And my pet peeve is when people don't remember they have like something in like that. Maybe they don't have a calendar, but like something was scheduled and you had it there, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot about that." Annoys me. But anyways, and finally, a piece of advice that you'd give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
Honestly, like life is like limitless. Like don't think inside the box, really explore beyond boundaries, go past societal norms, and maybe like you're going to be the next future entrepreneur or next innovator one day. So never confine yourself to a box, really push yourself to your limits. The sky's the limit.
Well, thanks again, Abby. That's a kind of a good way to wrap it up. Thank you for kind of jumping on the podcast, sharing kind of your insights and story. If someone's listening to this and they're inspired by what they've heard and they want to reach out and just connect somehow, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can find me through my Instagram at skyhighperformance_ or email me at skyhighperformance1@gmail.com. Both ways are fine.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And for those of you listening, as always, appreciate you guys reaching out and listening. On to the next episode.
Thank you so much, Aura.